You are the
I mean,
executive of your life. Let's be
yeah, exactly. Thank you for saying that. You're the leader of your life. It has nothing to do with the job title. Yeah, my niche is a human being. We are all operating on a set of paradigms, right? And a paradigm is just an externalized behavior based on the belief system that you have. In most cases, when you're not really aware of that, these are systems that don't serve you.
Welcome back to the Dr. Mo Show. Today I have Kathryn Ficarra, and we are going to talk about normalizing personal growth in the workspace. I don't want to say too much. I'd like you to introduce yourself, what you do before I dig in and pick your brain.
My company is called the C Group Studio, and I work with executives and leadership on executive presence, right? How to cultivate executive presence. But my perspective on executive presence is very different than the way I was taught it and the way that I believe has been transactionalized in our culture. And, a lot of times when you think about presence, you think about, it's how a person walks in the room or how they dress or how good they are at listening, how, do they have empathy? And those are all byproducts of having true presence, but actually cultivating it is something that's really done internally. It's really an internal transformation because it's my belief that we are all operating on a set of paradigms, right? And a paradigm is just an externalized behavior based on the belief system that you have, right? It's how you, based on the way you grew up and the beliefs that you created as a child, is how you now view the world and you approach your work and you approach your life all through these set of programs. And it's not until you can identify and understand what those programs are that you can really understand, like, okay, I'm showing up this way and I'm making decisions this way based on this belief system I have. And in most cases, when you're not really aware of that, these are systems that don't serve you, right? So it's really about cultivating that awareness, breaking that down, right? And recreating a narrative that works for you. And so I developed this impact framework, which is a 6-pillar framework. I'm actually writing my book on it right now. And it's really meant to take you from identity alignment, mindful or mastering your mindset, persona identification, authentic communication, consistent embodiment, and transformative growth. Those are my pillars. And I just kind of take you through this concept of how do you first get aware? What is a paradigm? How do you get aware? What is it? How do you want to show up? What's the version of you really want to step into? And then how do we bridge that gap? So that's what I teach on.
That's fantastic. It's funny because I was just saying that this morning. Tuesdays are for fat loss around my parents. I coach on both fat loss and then I coach physicians. And we
Mm-hmm.
were talking today about the role of identity. This isn't
Mm,
about if I tell you you can't do this, it's got a completely different flavor than I don't want to do this because I don't feel well when I do it this way. Or
mm,
even in our company, we've got some role changes going on. And we've talked to them. My nurse practitioners, for example, have grown up in traditional medicine, which, like you said, it's transactional. Your worth is how many patients can you see? How many prescriptions can you write? How many people can you push through the system? And instead, I am encouraging my staff, all of them, to to see personal growth, learning, working on things, seeing these paradigm shifts as part of your job.
I love that. Part of your job. That is the piece I think that we're missing is that we have done such a great job in corporate America of making it your home and your work life, and there's no congruency between the two. And so I think what COVID did, right, was COVID introduced this new concept that, oh, wait a second, I'm actually bringing my whole self to work because now I'm sitting in my bedroom. You can see my bed behind me, the cat sleeping on there, whatever, right? And
Cats walking across.
all of a sudden it's like, wait, no, I have to bring my whole self to this job, right? And that I think was a really interesting turning point for how companies are now responding to that, because the growth work, you don't have, everything starts with an idea, right? And it's like innovation, it also, innovation, forward thinking, getting fast to market, like all the things you need to execute in your work life. all come from your mind, right? They come from your these ideas that you have, but you can't get the clarity around that until you deal with all the crap that's in between. So it's like when you really start to navigate that and get really clear and have that inner alignment, you start to come up with these concepts and these ideas, and it's like they flow in such a different from such a different perspective, and your clarity on that allows you to do your job so much better. And so this is really the message that I've been trying to really get across is like, let's really understand what is the benefit, right? And companies really investing in not just don't tell me how to run a one-on-one or understand what a benchmark or a KPI. We all know those are like, or how to do a review. It's like, it's kind of like those are all ancillary to really getting to the foundational problems and the foundational opportunities that we all have within us. And that's, I think, what I'm so excited about when it comes to this work.
So tell me your thoughts on this, because I think I don't think it's necessarily generational, but certain mindsets would rather do transactional. You do it the way I tell you.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, I want you to fit this mold. How does someone that has that thought process break out into, if you allow your people to have that conduit of thought, right? That coming from an internal, clear place, clear vision, that they will be worth more to you and bring more to the table, because not everybody wants to own their own company, but
Yeah.
everybody wants to be relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's funny because I think that's probably the starting point, right? Is you have to have somebody who's like, they have to have that desire for that. They have to see the value in that. And, if you're a person that's like, no, I'm just doing it this way, this is the way that works, and you've never been able to see like what that value is or why you would ever change anything, then, you're probably not going to go down that road, right? It's going to take something in your life that's going to bubble up and change the way that you perceive that. And you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're like, there's got to be more than this. I got to change the situation, right? But I think that's what happens to a lot of people when they get to that place, or they finally get to that place of awareness. They're like, oh, it happened because I had this event happen in my life, right? Or, something shook me so hard that it like the floor fell out underneath me. And that's where you're really seeing a lot of this growth trajectory happening from. But and unfortunately, what I'm trying to do is get to you before that happens, right? So that when things do happen, you understand how to navigate those circumstances with more certainty, with more clarity, where you're coming from a place utilizing your parasympathetic nervous system, right? Where your genius is, so that you really understand that no, there's so much power within you. You're so remarkable. You're not a passenger in the seat in your driver's seat of your life. You're a co-creator in that. And that's where, I think we lose a lot of people because they become victims. They don't understand that. They feel like they're just reacting to what's going around instead of responding in a way that's like, no, this is happening for me, not to me. That was the biggest, when I really understood that, I'm like, how is this happening for me, not to me? Because I've had such a crazy, my past is my story is very textured, right? But in a way that I look back at it and I'm like I get it, and I get that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. There are days where I'm like, some parts of my life are not where I want them to be, right? And I'm just like, when I'll say something and I'll listen to myself and I'm like, oh, I teach on that. Like, of course, like like I
Right?
gotta even remind myself we're not all perfect. Like, but I get it. I'm like, no, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now, And I think when you have that when you can cultivate that kind of inner peace, then there it changes the game for you in so many ways. And then it really kind of comes out in your energy, right? Presence is about your energy. It's the energetic conversation you have without ever saying anything, right? It's like you walk in a room and like your energy is already having a conversation with that person's energy. Like it's a vibration. And so I think it's having the awareness of being like, this is the energy I want to put out. This is the story I want to tell versus I'm just made up of all of these things that have happened to me. And this is how I show up. So it's like you have that choice, right? And that's what I like about the impact program, because it shows you that, right? You're revealing a version of yourself that's already within you. You're just choosing it. And you're saying, nope, that's the version of myself that I really want to lean into. And that's what I'm going to materialize.
I definitely have a question on this, but this image came to mind. It's like either showing up in the kitchen with a flour, sugar, butter, eggs, all of these things that had happened to you, or taking them and creating a cupcake with sprinkles.
I
So
love
it's
that.
either
That's a
you
great
show
analogy.
like
That's so
that's the
good.
imagery that came in. So feel free to use that.
I might use that. I love that.
Because that's it. You either show up with all these ingredients, this hodgepodge of crap that's happened to you in your life, or you take that and you create something beautiful from it, whether it's a company, a quilt, a craft,
Right.
a relationship. You are
Right.
allowed to create things from your circumstances. So, did you hit a rock bottom? Did you hit that critical point? Did you have a point that made you shift? One point that you were like, nope, I'm not doing it.
I didn't have one point. I had like five.
Okay.
So I had a very successful corporate career for 20 something years. I was a vice president for three different in three different verticals, and did very well, made a lot of money, and was had the big house and the vacation house and two kids and a live-in nanny and the whole thing. And I guess right before COVID, yeah, 2019. So I even all through this though, I know that there was always that always felt like there was something missing. I just wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't happy. And I remember being at one company and I was like, is there a such thing as a life coach? There is now. There wasn't then.
Right.
There just didn't really exist, right?
Yep.
But I couldn't put my finger on why I was feeling not not happy. And I was just like, I look on paper, I look like I have the perfect life. There's no so what happens when you get to that place is you start engaging in activities that are like self-sabotaging, right?
1000%.
know, extramarital, activities, or you're drinking too much, or like, and so it's like, and I partook in a lot of those things. And so, I think I got to the place in where I finally was like, I don't want to hurt anybody else. I don't know why I'm feeling like this. And I walked out of my life, like my job, my big house, my marriage, everything, just left and put myself in a very long time out and had to figure out like what I have to survive for my kids. So like what does that look like? And the things I learned was I probably threw myself into a personal growth trajectory of like for 5 solid years. That's all I did. It's all I listened to. It's all I studied. I went to every conference. I just made it was my job actually. It's the only thing I was drawn to for some reason. It found me, right? I really believe that. And I think now when I connect the dots on this, and this is why I'm so big on the belief systems, is that, I grew up in an amazing home and there's four of us, my parents, and my mom got sick as I was very young. And the way that that was handled was the best way that they knew how to, right? But there was not a lot of conversation or information that were shared with us kids. So from 12 to 19, in my mind, I was like, oh, my mom is getting better every day. She's getting better every day. She's in and out of hospital. She was sick for 9 years, going through every experimental treatment you can imagine. But until the day before she died, I had no idea she was that sick because what we were told was, no, 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 she's going to get better. She was telling us this, right? She's like, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. So through a series of, things that I started to kind of unravel and understand that she was as sick as she was that last year, um, and then when she actually died, I was shocked that she died. I just had no idea she was that sick. So if I look at that and I go, okay, well, then I put that away. I tuck that away. I get on a plane shortly after that. I moved to Seattle and compartmentalize that. And then it comes up, right? It comes up as a paradigm, as a program where, if I say, okay, so even the way I found out she was sick, right? I find out she's sick from a friend of mine in art class, right? So this is how this is how belief systems start. I'm going to tell you this exactly how it starts. So the event is I find out in class that she's sick. How did that make me feel? Well, that made me feel scared and sad and confused. And what did I start to believe about myself from that? Right. So then I look at if I take this back and I go, so I started to believe about that I don't have stability is not for me. I'll never feel stable. I'll never feel like, if things feel like they're good, they're really not. Right. This was a belief system that I started to create back when I was 12 years old. I can see it now. I didn't then. And so what happens is that then I go through life and I recreate that same scenario, right? That's what I invite in because that's what I start to believe about myself. And so
And
when
it's
you have
comfortable. Know
it's
how to navigate
comfortable.
that.
I can navigate that. I know what that feels, and that's what I expect. And as long as that's what I expect, that's what I'm going to get. And so, what I've really had to do in my last 5 years is figure out, like, okay, what are all these little systems hiding within myself that now I can break down and start to recreate? And, we're humans. We're all living this human experience. We all have them. We all have a paradigm. We all have a program. And a lot of times when you're going through life, it's your program going through life, not you, because you have been so, like you've got so much armor on from your life experience that you don't go through anything. It's your program, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
You
how
don't
do you
want to go through anything. That shit hurts.
no, exactly. So it's like, how do you take that armor off and go through life as you, not your program? So,
It's funny when I wrote my book, Happy First. That's actually it was my climbing out of the pit. It's funny you say that because when I first started showing up as me, sort of in my life, it was either, like you said, you walked out of your life because you had to figure it out. To me, it felt like walking around the world bleeding from your eyeballs. You were just so visible. You had no skin. Everything hurt because it was the first time in forever, right? When you're 12, you don't have coping skills. You develop what saves your life, which is great, right? Super grateful for that. But you go through and it's hard to climb out of the pit. And like for me, it was either I couldn't live the way my brain worked anymore. And
mhm,
that was the kind of the first, like you said, like you've been through a few of those. And that was the first time I thought, well, either I change, and I didn't have kids at the time, so a kid. Um, but it was either I change the way my brain works or I don't use my brain any longer to solve
mm,
that. And it was like, and I wasn't talking, I was going to check out. Like this, I
yeah,
could not tolerate
yeah,
living in my brain any longer. And I chose to change, thank God. But much like yourself, I immersed myself. Like I had words coming in constantly from other people because the words that I had created, that hypercritical voice I had created was so miserable. Just couldn't do it.
yes. The critical voice, the story we tell ourselves every day. It's just, oh God.
And
So
it
you have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, right? Like, I mean,
grab the
it's
couple that aren't being assholes.
exactly. There's a lot of assholes in that head. I know.
Oh my God, you do not want to go into my brain alone in the dark. It's a
Yeah,
place you
yeah,
do not want to go alone in the dark. But
for
it
sure.
does take cultivating, it's changing, it's rewiring. Like even if you're looking from a neuroplastic standpoint, it is rewiring very old patterns. For
Yeah,
you, as that 12-year-old who finds out, and that waiting for the other shoe to drop is my MO. You know,
yeah,
it's probably a lot of ours in this space because we have not wanted to live there anymore.
yeah.
It's such a miserable place to be waiting for something to go wrong. And even now when things get unstable or oh,
Hmm.
what if this happens, I have to back up and say, if the worst case happens, I will build something else.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's terrifying. I don't want things to go badly, none
Yeah.
of.
Waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's a really good way to, I think, describe it too. And when you live your life like that, when you live your life coming from that expectation, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah,
That's your belief.
that's
Like
what you do.
shoe's gonna drop and you're going to go, yeah, I knew it. I knew
I
it.
knew it.
This is what
I
I
knew it was
knew
coming.
this was going
I'm
to happen.
prepared.
I knew it.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
emotionally prepared. But here's like
Yeah.
for your mom, for example, or like my grandfather was one of the first times my family was explaining in the best way they knew how. And when I was in medical school, that my grandfather had had a stroke. Oh, it's not that bad.
Mm,
I walked out, didn't ask for leave, nothing. Walked out, got on a plane, got down there, and I see my grandfather intubated in the ICU on a ventilator on life support. And I'm like, I'm sorry, this does not qualify as not that
not
bad.
that bad.
And, I became the decision maker kind of when I walked in the door. I was the only one with any medical education. So my grandmother said, honey, please make the decisions. And
Mhm.
third year medical student, right? Sounds great. Sounds great. And which is fine. I'm happy to have served that role. But when I got there, I was like, oh, they're lying through their teeth. And I'm sure they wanted it to be true, right? And I
Uh,
think that's where that comes from. You said they did the best they could because we want to have affirmations. We want to have hope. We don't want to live in a situation where we're waiting for the other shoe to drop, but we still have to look reality in the eye and say, here's where we sit. Now what?
right, right,
And
right,
like you said, that's the choice where are you going to bring the eggs or are you going to bring the cupcake?
right.
That's the decision point, but you can't make that decision without valid information.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just don't want to, then like one of my big things with my patients and my physician clients is I never want somebody to go through something alone.
Yeah.
I want them to feel like they're alone.
That's a scary thing to feel like you're alone. And I think what I tried to do was, and there's so, for those people who do feel like they're alone, there's so many support systems, there's so many groups, there's like, we really do have access to an incredible amount of information that's even free, right? You can go on YouTube, you can get a lot of education for free on those things. You could join, there's so many things you can do. So if you're feeling that way, you definitely want to take action on that. Um,
And if you're feeling really bad, call 911. Okay. There's
yeah,
always
yeah. How do I go from here without, I don't want to spend 5 years. Nobody wants to spend 5 years. So I'm kind of like, here's my 5 years in 6 steps, like,
right.
here you go. Right. Like,
Like you were talking, it was so funny because I was like, you were talking, thinking, where were you 3 years ago? That was my point where I looked,
yeah.
the way I phrase it is I looked down the barrel of my life and I said, is this where you're going to be in 20 years?
Mm,
Because I watched my grandmother die for the last 10.
yeah.
And I don't want to do that. And if I could go back and learn, after having learned what I learned, if I could have gone back and helped her live a better life for the last 10 years, I would, but I can't.
Yeah.
So my service is helping other people compress my 2 years of identity crisis, losing my hair, getting shingles, all the crap, I can compress that crap into 90 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, I needed me. I needed you. I needed you to
I
drag me.
needed me. I needed me 5 years ago for sure. But that's what's interesting because I had no idea this would be what I was doing now. I never intended to be an entrepreneur. And that was never what I wanted to do. Like, it wasn't, I still today, I'm like, great, it's hard. But
It's hard.
I think that it's like the universe has other plans for you. I was just kind of taken down this road and ended up here by default, right? It wasn't, it wasn't an intention, but it's clearly where I'm meant to be. And I just want to serve people now, right? So it's like, I think that's where I'm supposed to be, right? It's just to help people and serve people.
I completely agree with that. And I think a great place to start winding down, because that's where I want people to understand that most of us who end up as entrepreneurs, you're not going to go into it thinking, well, I don't know. I didn't go into it thinking, wow, I'm going to be a millionaire tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's more like these people need help. How can I help them? It's just it's a very weird path
Yeah.
that I didn't, like you said, I didn't see myself being here, but now I wouldn't be anywhere else.
You just have to be open to it, right? You have to be open to be like, okay, what if I'm open to letting the universe like bring me, or God or whoever your higher power is, like bring me the opportunities that are meant for me,
Yeah.
then that's where you're going to flourish, right? So it's really leaning into that flow. I talk a lot about, go with the flow. And when people talk about go with the flow, I think the initial response to that is, oh, flow meaning, go do what everybody else is doing. But that's really not what flow is. Flow is like, what does flow feel like for you? Where do you feel the most passion, the most joy, right? When you start to really lean into those things and allow things to unfold because you're open to them and you're leaning into that feeling, then things just, the path lights for you.
It really does, but that is also scary.
Yeah, it is scary. I'm living proof of how scary it is.
It's freaking
Actually,
terrifying.
it's terrifying for
I
sure.
know it is. So if someone is an executive or even not an executive, a high achiever, and they
Or
want to
a
get in
mom,
touch,
a stay-at-home mom. I've worked with
right?
like,
Because you are the
I mean,
executive of your life. Let's be
yeah, exactly. Thank you for saying that. So this is so funny. And even I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can find me on there. I put a lot of content on there. But I talk about like leadership. You're the leader of your life. This is
yeah.
not a job title, right? It has nothing to do with the job title. As a business owner, and you have to have a niche and all these things. And I'm kind of like, yeah, my niche is a human being. That's who my niche
Yep.
is. Like, I want to talk to every single person because you're not, it's not limited to what you do as a title. It has nothing to do with that, right?
Yes.
It's like, it's just, do you have a desire to change the way that you're showing up? That's all I need from you. I need you to be like, hey,
Yeah.
you know what? Yeah, I want something different. I got you.
It's so funny because it's like if you are, so my marketing is I coach doctors, right? But if you come to me and you're a nurse practitioner and you're like, oh, I really need your stuff, I'm not going to say no because I need the people who need me.
Yes, yes, yes.
The people, are you ready?
Yeah.
Are
You
you
just gotta
ready to
be
have some
ready.
fun? Are you ready to actually get down to fixing some shit?
Yeah.
You know, and I agree wholeheartedly. So they can find you on LinkedIn.
Find me on LinkedIn under Kathryn Ficarra. And then I'm on Instagram at the C Group Studio, the
Awesome.
letter C. And my website is thecgroupstudio.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for your time. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. And thank you for being of service, most of all.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.